Okay, so we have data sets loaded into ArcGIS Pro. They can be found on the left-hand side in our table of contents. If we ever lose this table of contents, we of course can go to the View tab, Contents, get it back like that. Now, there are different views. You can view it by data source, you can view it by selection, you can view it by editing, right, by label, all that kind of stuff. We're only going to focus on list by drawing order, right? So that's our table of contents. There's a few different views, but our drawing order, we can of course move this up and down. Typically a GIS hierarchy, which is very useful to keep in mind when we start to symbolize things, is that points go on top of lines, lines go on top of polygons, polygons go on top of base maps, and then everything else just gets chucked to the bottom or doesn't exist. Yeah. And of course, then our base maps, can interchange, I suppose, with imagery as well. If you have any historic georeference maps, they might be your base maps, they might be a polygon, whatever it is, but that's typically the hierarchy that we're dealing with, right? So if like road network was on top of my schools, so you can see road network are lines and my special areas of conservation are polygons, and I start to turn on these three data sets, you can see here, we can't see anything, right, below special areas of conservation, but if I drag down road network, I have points on top of lines, on top of polygons, and that's typically how GIS symbology starts. So the first step is to get your data sets in order, right? Now, if we just run through how to change the symbology, once you change the symbology for a point, you automatically kind of, change it for a line, change it for a polygon. Bearing in mind that points probably have the most diverse amount of options available for symbology within ArcGIS Pro, and within kind of GIS in general. Like there's a lot more ways to symbolize a point as opposed to polylines, as opposed to polygons. Yeah. But we'll cover points here now. You'll notice that we talked about tabs, we talked about ribbons before. So we have our map tab, we have insert tab, we have analysis tab, and then we have our ribbons of tools for each tab. You'll notice to get to the symbology, there's two different ways to do it. Number one, you see on the table of contents, I can just double left click this point and up pops a gallery, right, of symbology. And that's just if I want to change like a really quick and easy way if you're making use of the ArcGIS gallery, right? There's tons of different symbology options already there for you to choose from. Or I can highlight schools geocoded, so highlight the name of the layer that you wish to change. And you can see here we have three different options now. We have feature layer, labeling, and data. We want to go into feature layer. And we have a few different options. We can change visibility ranges, we can change transparency. The biggest one here is to change symbology. And again, it's a two-part button, right? So the icon lands me on something, but then if I click on the text, I get more options. Yeah. So the first way to change it is obviously single symbol. If we just talk about it, if you left click it, there's a gallery here that you can make use of that I can put everything in as red stars. If I want to, I go to properties and then I can change the size of it. I can change the color of it. And I want to change it to turquoise. One difference, if you've kind of messed around with ArcGIS Online, or you're comfortable with ArcGIS Online, and if you change the symbology, you'll notice one of the key differences is that in ArcGIS Pro, I have to hit apply here, right? Because if I don't hit apply, the symbology doesn't get committed to the actual data set. In ArcGIS Online, it's instantaneous. So that's just one limitation to be aware of, that if you change things in ArcGIS Online, it changes straight away. It changes the points or the lines or the polygons straight away in your map. Not the case in ArcGIS Pro, that if I make a change here, if I say, oh, actually the size I want like super small, I press enter, nothing happens until I press apply. Okay, so just bear that in mind. You can make use of the gallery, make use of properties, and then there's a few more advanced options, but we don't really need to get into it. Majority of the time, what you're going to want to be able to do is maybe select something from the gallery, It's a triangle, a square, a star, right? Whatever. There's tons more different options, like I said, but that's really up to you to go away and explore depending on your own particular data set. But then you might want to just change the color, change the size, and that's really most of what you want to do when you go in to single symbol. Now, what's the point in having geographic information in an attribute table if you're not going to use it, right? So I have a lot of columns within this school's data set that started its life as a CSV. And maybe I want to go into unique values. And if I go into unique values, again, highlight schools geocoded, go up to feature layer, click the text, not the icon, click on unique values. And now all of a sudden I get a field, right? So unique values, and then I go, okay, well, I want to say, you know, maybe what's an Irish classification? And we have two types. We have all subjects are taught through the Irish language, or no subjects are through the Irish language. Now you can see here, very kind of difficult to see. I have options. I can change the color ramp itself to something more meaningful, maybe. So I see like, oh, red is all subjects taught through Irish, blue is no subjects taught through Irish. And then, as opposed to going into each one individually, I can click on more. I can say format all symbols. And then I can change the size of all of them if I want to. Yeah, just change it up to maybe size 12. Again, not forgetting to hit apply. 12, maybe a bit too much. Bring it back down to 8. Again, not forgetting to hit apply. So now that starts to make a little more sense. I can press back here. It's going to bring me back to where I was. If you're trying to rip out answers, right? So like, okay, it's great. I can symbolize this based on different fields, okay? But if you did want to get like rough and ready values, if your boss is asking you, hey, in this data set, how many schools are all subjects taught through Irish, you can click on more and you could say show count. And what that does, if we expand this a little bit, is you can see here there's 10 schools where all subjects are taught through Irish, which, you know, you'd say, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but then there's a few hidden, you know, that maybe aren't immediately obvious. If you want to get rough and ready counts, you can do a select, you can do a definition query, which we'll be covering in an upcoming video, or really handy way, just coming in here, more, show count, and that gets us answers that we want. And again, if I wanted to say Irish classification, and then maybe I want to add another field, I could do that, you know, and I could say, oh, well, show me all the Irish classifications, and then show me there's a Gaeltacht, you know, and it's going to crunch all those numbers together and say, oh, in blue, all subjects are taught through Irish, and it's a Gaeltacht area, which means it's an Irish-speaking area. So you can see here, here's our Gaeltacht area. Green means there's no subjects taught through Irish, and it's not in a Gaeltacht area. You could symbolize based on multiple fields, and the principle remains the same. Once I have that count enabled, I can start ripping out answers, right? So GIS, you know, is not only the system of record where I load data sets in, color them, I can also start to get answers out of it, even through my symbology as well. Yeah. The other different option as well is graduated colors. Graduated colors and graduated symbols. Roughly the same. Graduated colors don't change size, whether if I click on graduated symbols here, then I have a few different options. So, you know, the field itself can only be numeric, okay? So just bear that in mind, right? When we come in and I can see, oh, what's the total here? And I can see, you know, the bigger the point, right? The bigger the symbol, I should say, the larger number the enrollment is of total. And I could break that down and say, oh, well, you know, and again, coming back in, show count, you can break them down by class. So you can see there's 4 schools that are larger than 471, right, pupils. And the difference between graduated symbols and proportional symbols is that we have the exact same fields that we can go in and we could say, oh, this is going to be a total and my template, you know, my minimum size. And if I want to display this in real time or get more control over the histogram, I can choose proportional symbols. Or if I go to graduated symbols, I then have more control over the maximum point. I have more control over the color of it as well. It doesn't make a difference for a vast majority of use cases, but if you did want to use them, and we were saying, you know, oh, well, I have, you know, natural breaks, quantile distribution, manual interval, if you want to set your own breaks for these, right? So if I wanted to say, oh, well, actually, I'm going to say that this upper value is going to be less than 50. This is going to be less than 100. You know, I can write that in directly to the data set. Yeah, and I can say what's going to be greater, and then I can see how my data is going to change based on that. So that's female enrollment throughout my schools. Two other options just to finish off, because it is kind of one of those things that's it's very difficult to teach. You know, this is how this is the method to get to it. You know, but look, I mean, a vast majority of your time, if you're doing anything in symbology, is going to be picking the right color ramp, picking the right color scheme, all that kind of stuff. But from here, if I wanted to go into charts, I can. And if I wanted to say, oh, well, I want female, male, gives me handy bar graphs or bar charts. I also have options for pie charts. I also have options for stack charts as well. But just depending on what you want to get out of it, you know, pie charts can be quite useful, right? Particularly when they're coupled with the next video, which is all about labeling. But the idea here is that you come in, you say, oh, cool, look, you know, again, I have options to format all symbols, make them bigger, or click on each individual one. As with any option within Symbology, maybe I want to color one orange, hit apply, color one a different color, purple, orange, tend to stand out, so I'm happy enough. But again, you know, wanted to change it using gallery, whatever it is, you can do so. But that is a rough and ready kind of way to get started with Symbology and the different options. Just to show you what it looks like, if I highlight my special areas of conservation, I go into Symbology, I have other options here as well, most notably a dot density one, quite useful if you have numeric values. It'll randomly assign little dots within your polygon. Within the road network itself, one thing to write home about is these kind of graduated symbols, these proportional symbols. You know, you might have a motorway, for instance, within a line data set, a road network. And I can come in here and my motorway is a thicker line than, say, my primary road versus my secondary road, etc. Yeah. The only other things just to bear in mind is that, again, you know, left click on something in the gallery, and you can change it directly. Yeah. Or change the transparency, change the visibility range, and go from there. Yeah. And then just the final thing I would say, if I have a single symbol based on my schools, or even like a unique value as well, if I wanted to go back to that Irish classification, for instance, maybe change it to something a little more meaningful, and then maybe change the size of the points and hit apply. You also have an option for aggregation as well. So you can cluster them together, which is going to tell you rough and ready, oh, there's 25 schools in this area. As you zoom in, starts to go into 10, starts to go into 3s and 2s, or you have binning as well, which is quite a nice feature. I would say use it probably sparingly. Depends on the data set. Some data sets really suit clustering. and aggregation. Some data sets kind of don't, yeah. But quite cool, you know, just to let you know there's other ways to symbolize things as well, right? But I'm gonna hit no need, and we'll get to the next video, which is about labeling, yeah.